Welcome to Biohack and Build a Better You, the podcast where we unlock the secret to living a longer, healthier life and create a bloom zone in our life and within our family. I'm your host, Michaela Morell, and I'm here to provide you with the tools and knowledge to empower you to build a better you, one essential building block at a time. We all have a go-to person when it comes to nutrition and health. In today's episode, I'll talk about why your go-to person most likely doesn't have the knowledge needed to measure and correct imbalances within your cell membrane. When they miss this fundamental knowledge, most other intervention will have limited effect, leaving you not feeling your best despite your honest efforts. I'll explain why measuring your omega balance might be the most important test and the consequences of being unbalanced. My goal is that every practitioner out there get educated about this, and in the future that will happen, but until then, it is up to you to stay informed. So thanks for being here. I want to remind you that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Read the disclaimer in the show notes, and I remind you to always consult your healthcare provider if you plan to make any dietary changes. But now it's time for the episode, so let's dive in. So before I'm starting with today's podcast episode, I just want to come here and express gratitude for each and every one out there that have been listening to my podcast, that is tagging me in your story when you're out walking and listening, and for all the reviews that you have left on, the stars on Spotify, the stars and written reviews on Apple Podcast. I am so honored and so grateful. And I've also have had amazing experiences this week. One was with me jumping on a 15-minute Zoom with one of my listeners, and I was met with tears and joy over getting that time with me. And it's so beautiful how this platform can reach people all over the world. And I've got messages from the Netherlands expressing how this guy is really enjoying every episode and how I got him to tears because he related to my story with my mom. I'm truly, truly grateful for you to be here. Thank you for everything you do to help this podcast grow. I so appreciate you. And because today I'm talking about omega balance, everyone that is leaving a written review in the Apple Podcast, I will give out a free blood test that measures the omega balance. So if you're listening to this episode and you want to be part of it, write me a written review under the podcast section in the Apple Podcast, and you will be a part of the drawing. I will do the drawing when I'm launching the next episode next week. Thank you for tuning in. Hello, body hacking community. So I got inspired to talk a little bit about how come your go-to person, we all have a go-to person when it comes to our health. It might be a doctor, it might be a holistic doctor, it might be a dietitian, it might be a nutritionist, it might be a chiropractor. It is someone that we're looking up to when we're talking about our health. And a lot of the times, the people we are having as our go-to person is someone that we like and we trust, because otherwise we are changing it. So it's not our go-to person, but eventually we find our go-to person that we ask when it comes to health. And I want to talk today about how is it that all of these professionals have missed one of the most important blood tests that you can do for your own health. And I want to take you on a journey to understand that a lot of the material you have in education, it is based on people's agenda. So in the doctor's world, for example, the textbooks for the doctors are never meant to help you to actually reach healing. It is meant for the doctors to understand a problem and then read what are we doing in that case as a solution. But often those solutions are profiting the pharmaceutical industry. So it was actually that a long time ago, we were allowed to have all different kinds of health practitioners, herbalists, and all different people that were allowed to call themselves healers. And eventually, the pharmaceutical industry, they claimed that and they took away everyone else's right to be allowed to talk about the healing as a process of healing. So they established that everyone that haven't taken our education, they're quackers, they're not allowed to speak about it. If they are speaking about it, we will hunt them down. They will be getting rid of their license if they have a doctor license, if they're talking about two natural things, and so on. So it was almost like a witch hunt, but on people that had healing powers. And it is fascinating when we're talking about healing powers because there are so many people out there. And you will see in future episodes that I'm a very spiritual person. I believe in energy. I believe that our body is able to heal itself under the right circumstances, that we can create better circumstances for our body to self-heal. And sometimes those circumstances include working on our mental health as well, working on old traumas, working on our belief about ourselves, about in our on our inner child, and even old traumas that have been passed down in generations. So it's not only the food we're eating, and that is the reason why I'm named my podcast Body Hacking instead of Biohacking, because I do a lot of biohacking and I'm manipulating how the body is built up, how the cells are built up, and creating better circumstances for the cells to function. But then again, it's not only physical, sometimes it is spiritual, mental, and so on, that we also need to rewire our brain and have better pathways in our body for having an alignment that is good for healing. But when we're looking at the pharmaceutical industry, they monopolized the medical industry. And they are the one deciding what's in the textbooks for practitioners, doctors, nurses, and so on. And then a lot of what's in the dietitian's books or nutritionist books, sometimes they are like, I actually started the education to become a dietitian. I thought I wanted to help people with meal planning, but I wanted to do it from being a sick person to becoming a healthy person perspective. And I understood very quickly that the dietitian education for me, I could not align myself with them. The dietitian recommendations are not usually something I would recommend if people are sick. For creating the most optimal. You can create better circumstances, but I don't want better. I want the most optimal circumstances for self-healing. And a lot of the things they're including in their diet plan that you have to talk about, they do not align with optimal health. That's my belief. And until someone is proving me wrong, that will be my belief. But maybe I'm changing my belief sometime. But in my experience and what I've seen so far, what I'm doing is working really, really, really good. And the only way, like, I won't go backwards, I will only go forward. So if someone is proving to me there is something that is working even better, yes, then we can have a conversation. Anyway, so when we're looking at textbooks, I've been reading textbooks and I've been helping nurses, for example, to find the chapters about the cell. Because the most important blood work you can do for yourself, that I believe is the most important one, is actually, it's not vitamin D testing, it's not magnesium testing, it is cell membrane testing. Because our whole body is built up with cells. And now we're going to go into chemistry and biology, how things are working in our body. And different molecules looks different. They're taking up different amount of space. Some are getting very crowded when they're close to each other. Some of them are very spacious because they take up more space. So in our cell, it's built up with fatty acids. And that usually the textbooks are stating. There's usually stating the cell membrane are built up with fatty acids. But that is usually it. They don't usually go into what kind of fatty acids and what are the optimal levels and how does the omega-6, for example, is one essential fatty acid that is essential for our health, but it is pro-inflammatory. But they're not going into how does it look like from a chemical perspective. How is the atom and how is the molecule looking like? How are they combined together to become a molecule, and like how are the structure? And that is where the industry is failing us, because a healthy body begins with a healthy cell, and our practitioners don't even know what is building up the cell. They don't even know what kind of nutrients we need to eat to have enough of building blocks for our cell membrane. The cell membrane is supposed to protect DNA. It's supposed to let the nutrients in that is supposed to get into the cell so that we can create energy and have a functioning ATP production. It is supposed to help detox the cell of the waste, of the toxins that got in there, of the leftovers and waste from the ATP production. But if we're building up our cell membranes with too many omega-6 molecules. So omega-6 molecules, if you're watching this on YouTube, you will see me using my hands a lot this episode. So you might want to go there if you want to understand it a little bit deeper. But think of the omega molecules I'm talking about now as balls with two tails. So it's almost like a ball with two tails. That's a very good explanation. But the omega-6 that is essential, we cannot create it. We need to eat it or supplement with it. But we don't really need to supplement with omega-6 because it's in everything we eat. It is an essential fatty acids that comes from everything that grows. So every fruit, every veggie, every piece of meat you eat because they have been eating grass and so on. Everything we eat contains omega-6. So we don't have to supplement with it unless we are under eating food in general and might struggle with some eating disorders. That is the only time I've seen people have been lacking omega-6. But the property of omega-6 in our body is that if we cut ourselves, for example, if we don't have omega-6, we will bleed out. So omega-6 is necessary. And omega-6 is then creating the inflammation in the cut, making the blood stop bleeding. And that is what's saving us. So the inflammation is actually saving us in this case. Then we have omega-3. Omega-3 is anti-inflammatory properties, and it looks different. It still looks like a ball with two tails, but their tails, they're very wide. They're spreading out. The omega-6, it have straight tails. The omega-3 have very big tails. They're like flowing around. And omega-3, whenever the inflammation is done, we have the omega-3 that's working like an off switch for the inflammation, or a fireman that is using its water to hose down the fire. So omega-3 have anti-inflammatory properties, and we need a balance between both of these fatty acids. So a few consequences are happening when we're not having a good balance. And what is a good balance, by the way? Maybe we have to start there. A good balance is when we're having either equal amounts or no more than 3 of the pro-inflammatory building blocks to every anti-inflammatory building block. That is what the scientific world have been able to see, that balance most bodies can deal with. But there are some health issues, according to the science, that benefits from getting down to 2-to-1 ratio, and they don't see any effect at a 4-to-1 ratio, for example. So I recommend 2-to-1 or closer to 1-to-1. 1-to-1 doesn't necessarily have to be better than 2-to-1, but we know that as lower it gets, usually the body is responding more to having a better balance. So this is called omega balance. And it's important to have that omega balance in our body. So one thing that is happening when we're having a lack of omega-3, And omega-3, most people have heard about it. They know fish oil. They know it comes from the sea. They know they are getting it from fish. Most people know if I go out on the street and ask them about what they know about omega-3, most people say it's good. And then when I ask them, so why is it good? Sometimes they do not have the answer, or sometimes they say, oh, I've heard it's good for the brain health. I've heard it's good for the heart health. I've heard it's good that you need to take it when you're pregnant. It's one of the supplementation that are recommended. And then I ask the next question. So, okay, so if it's good for your brain, if it's good for your heart, and if it's good when you're pregnant, what does omega-3 actually do in your body? And people get silent. They don't really know. And it frustrates me because if I ask them the same question about proteins, everyone will know that proteins, we take them, we eat them after we have been working out because they build muscles. And if you don't eat the proteins, you're breaking down your muscle mass without building it up again. And you will actually lose muscles. You won't be able to have the gain of muscles that you want to have. So almost everyone understands that a lack of protein is causing us muscle loss. And if we want to be strong, we need protein. But no one understands if we want to be healthy, we need omega-3. If we're not having omega-3, we're more likely to not be healthy. And why is that? Well, let me take you a little bit further into the biology class. I'm sorry if you did not like this class in school, but this is important for you to understand. It might be the most important thing for you to understand about your health because this is the one thing that the most easily, like you can measure it in your house and you can correct this imbalance by yourself. And you don't have to pay a practitioner or anyone else to figure this out for you. You can figure this out by yourself. Of course, always talk with your health practitioner if you're planning to do any health and dietary changes. But this is something that you can take control over and measure yourself, and you can measure it in your kids, you can measure it in your life partner, in your parents, whoever you want to measure it in. Even, I mean, it's important for dogs. It's important for everyone to have cells that are alive. So when we're going back to what is then the consequences of lacking essential, first of all, when something is called essential, it means that we need it. We cannot live without it. It's like vitamin C, it's essential. If we're not getting it, we're dying of scurvy. And there's a lot of vitamins and minerals out there that are called essential. And if we're having too little, we will have symptoms. There is a book about magnesium. And the lady that is writing this book, she gets so frustrated because if no one would have magnesium deficiency, it would be about 50 different diagnoses that would not exist. But they all exist because doctors have seen different symptoms, they have labeled it different things, they have created a medicine to kind of take away the symptoms. And the simple solution had been to give them magnesium and the symptoms would have disappeared. But instead, we're taking the hard way out. We quit educating people about what they can do for their health, and instead we're giving them solutions. So many people are so used to not have to think for themselves. They go to the doctors are reading in their textbook, this is the problem, here is what we do for it, here is the medication, here is the prescription, without even asking, what are you eating? How often are you working out? Are you breathing in fresh air in your lungs every day? Are you drinking water? Are you only drinking pop every day? Like, there are so many health issues due to malnutrition out there. And this is something I want to change. I want to empower you to be able to have and create an environment that the body have what it needs. Okay, back to biology class. So what is happening? You can imagine this. If you have balloons and you're having them, and they're helium balloons, let's play with that thought, and you're having strings that are going straight up. When you're holding the balloons in your hand, they are going to be able to stay very close together because the strings are very, very straight. That is what's happening when you're building up your cell membrane with too many omega-6s. Their legs are so straight that they get very compact. They can lay very close to each other, and they are not having any space in between the cells. When we have the omega-3, on the other hand, you don't have the strings. You have, what can I, I am making this up as I'm going right now, but you're having more like sticks from the wood, and they are not even. They are very uneven, and you have put balloons on them. So when you're holding all of those balloons with sticks that are pointing in different directions, you will have more space in between the cells because the legs are uneven. They're taking up more space. And because of this, you need more space to be able to host all of these balloons. And you will have more space in between the balloons. And that's how it works in our cell. So when we're having a good balance where we have about equal amounts of omega-6s and omega-3, the cell have more space between the fatty acids. And because of that, nutrients are able to get into the cells because they're able to get through the balloons, through the cells. And we're able to get all the micronutrients. There are some nutrients that are using a protein to get into the cell. But a lot of the micronutrients, a lot of our essential vitamins, minerals, they go directly through the cell membrane. And the cell needs to be permeable for that to happen. It needs to look like a jellyfish, permeable and floaty and can move around. And so nutrients are able to get in through the cell membrane, and waste and toxins are able to get out. But what is happening today is that when we are measuring cellular health on people, we can see a clear correlation on how the structure of how many pro versus anti-inflammatory building blocks are building up the cells and how permeable the cell is. So if we're building up the cell membrane with too many of the pro-inflammatory building blocks, it's not going to be as permeable. It's going to be harder cell membranes. Instead of being a plump jellyfish, it will be more like a dried raisin. And we don't want that. We want a flexible, permeable cell because they're also less prone for damage because they are flexible. And also, when we're building up the cell membrane with too many omega-6 molecules, what we have been able to see too is that the hormone receptors that are on top of the cell membrane, they're getting numbed out. So even if you have hormones in your body and your hormones are not, I mean, it looks perfect on a blood sample and your doctor don't understand why you're not feeling the best. It's because the hormone receptor is not able to attach the hormone to it. And then if the hormone is not able to attach the receptor, the next process is not going to happen. And if that is not going to happen, it doesn't matter how good your blood looks like. If your cells is not functioning correctly, you are not going to feel good. Your body will not function as optimally. So the most important things that are happening in the cell that needs to function is we need to have hormone receptors that are working. That is one thing. And then we need to have cell membranes that are permeable so that the micronutrients are able to get into the cell so that we can create energy. Everything starts with energy. Life starts with energy. The day when we don't have energy, we don't have life. And that is usually what is happening with one cell after another when we're struggling with dementia and when we're struggling with Alzheimer's. It is cells that are dying, and eventually our brain is not functioning anymore because the cells are not able to produce any more energy. They're not able to fill a purpose anymore. They're dead. So we need to have permeable cell membranes for energy production. So that is super important. And then the cells are communicating with each other. And if we are struggling with our cellular health, they will not be able to communicate as good with each other, making, if we're taking the cells up in our brain, for example, if the communication is not going fast, we will feel like we have brain fog. If the communication is overreacting, then we will feel like we want to explode and we will feel more anger and have more outbursts when we don't need to. So there's so many things that can happen because the cell communication is not working properly according to what they're supposed to. And we have a lot of reasons for that too, where we need to touch on that when we're talking about gut health. We need to touch on that when we're talking about regulating our nervous system. And there is a bunch of things that goes into that. But our cells is the foundation. If our cells are not functioning, it's going to be hard to regulate our temper and things and improve our gut health and so on if our cells are not functioning. So that's why I'm telling you that if we want to build a house, we're not starting building the roof. If we want to build a house, we're starting with the foundation. And in our body, our foundation are our cells. And we need to have the right consistency for that foundation to be stable and have the right properties. So that's why I'm telling you that maybe one of the most important blood work you can do for your body is checking your omega balance, because that is where health starts in our cells. And the fourth thing about the cell health, we have already talked about the communication, we have talked about the permeability to get nutrients in, and we have talked about the hormone receptors. And the fourth thing is the low-grade chronic inflammation that is happening when we are having too many of the pro-inflammatory building blocks instead of the anti-inflammatory building blocks. When we're having too many pyromaniacs that is standing there putting fire on houses and we only have one fireman that is hosing it down. One fireman can handle up to 3, but after that, it gets too much. They can't hose down all the inflammation that is going on, and it's leaving us with a low-graded chronic inflammation. And according to science, that is not good for us. Most health issues are actually having chronic inflammation as a factor. It usually starts with inflammation that is not under control. So if you want to learn more about this, I would highly encourage you to go to Google Scholar, where you find all peer-reviewed articles. And it's not just a Google search, but it's Google Scholar. So you go to Google, you search for Google Scholar, and then you find another site that it will only show you peer-reviewed articles. And then you can search omega-3 and inflammation and omega-3 ratio and omega-3 ratio and inflammation to see how is inflammation levels changing in our body when we're looking also at the ratio between omega-6 and omega-3. And there's lots of articles out there for you to read. And what will happen if you measure this? Well, one of my Facebook groups are doing just this. We're measuring how many pro versus anti-inflammatory building blocks in your body in every single cell. And it's giving a good overview over how it looks like, because we're able to measure the red blood cells. And that gives us a good overview over the diet you have had for the past 4 months. It's not just what you have been eating this week, but it's the past 4 months. And that is a good average of how your eating habits are during a whole year. And that gives us a good average of how your cell membranes in every single cell of your body is doing. Your cells in your white blood cells, red blood cells, your gut, your brain, your eyes, your heart, everywhere. And since we are creating about 2 new millions of cells every single second, it is important to make sure that we have all that we need in our system, in our blood, at all given times to be able to create healthy cell membranes. So looking at that, The omega balance might be the most important test you can do for yourself and for your body and your family. And there is science showing, and there's lots of articles if you just Google omega-3 ratio, or actually omega-3 index and life expectancy. There have been multiple reports now lately that an omega-3 index lower than 4% is shortening your lifespan with as much as if you're smoking every single day. It is as sure of a predictor of early death. And they say that's about 4.7 years that we are losing if we're having a low omega-3 index. But what will happen then if we're increasing that omega-3 index? And that is what is so exciting to think about. That is what makes me excited every day when I wake up, being able to test more people and educate about this. And it frustrates me when I meet then health practitioners that have so much power over people's health. And when I have a conversation with them, they don't know about this. They don't know how a cell is built up. They don't know what you need to eat in a day to be able to have all the building blocks for your body. They have no clue. And it's frustrating because we are so engraved to believe that they have all the knowledge that we need. But it is time for you to question why. It's time for you to question, how is my nutritional intake impacting my children's health every day? How is my nutritional intake impacting how I feel every day? It's time to start looking at nutrition not only as food, but as our medicine. And it's not that the food is the medicine. The food is just helping our body to function. And the reason why I say medicine is because people are so used to having a problem. And if there is a problem, we need to add something to have less symptoms. And in most cases, we just have to eat more food. We have to add more nutrition into our body. We have to make sure we have all the essentials. And when we do that, what happens? Well, I can only speak for myself. I've seen a lot of, I see every day things start happening with people's health, but I want them to share their story by themselves on my podcast. But in my case, I was just posting pictures of myself in my Facebook group. And it's fascinating because I post pictures that are 10 years old. And I both feel younger and I look younger today than I did 10 years ago. And I'm feeling amazing. And I'm not afraid of aging anymore. 5 years ago, I could not even fathom the idea of turning 40. It was impossible for me because I was in such a bad state. My body was not healthy. And even though I had been going to the doctors and been going to alternative treatments, and I've been going to and had many go-to people that I tried to ask them for help and they could not help me. But over the course of 8 years, I don't even know how many people I saw, and no one talked with me about omega balance. No one. No one had the education about it. No one had a clue. And since I learned about this, I have been speaking with countless practitioners about it. It frustrates me when we're looking in their textbooks because it brushes it over and there's no focus on the cell membrane. It just says the cell membrane is there. It's built with fatty acids. End of story. Sometimes I've actually been able to see omega-3 is a part of the cell membrane, but hardly no one even knows that. So that is the biggest reason why your go-to person when it comes to health might have missed this most important blood work that you can do for your health. And when we're looking also at the industry of medicine, I do believe that this will eventually be mainstream. But looking at the history, it took about 30 years from the data about vitamin D was out until they started implementing vitamin D testing as something routine when people are checking for problems with people's health. So 30 years into the future, I it will probably be more mainstream. But I actually met a doctor in the United States. I mean, I meet a lot of people and a lot of doctors, and I always ask them, is this a test you can send off blood work to? And one of the doctors said, I can send off that blood work, but I send it off to France, and the laboratory fee is $4,000. And I've never heard about like why we would need to send that test. So he did not understand why it would be important. He would not be able to explain that to insurance company why it would be necessary to take a test like this because he did not have the knowledge, and it was $4,000 in laboratory fee. So that is the biggest reason too. So even if your doctor have the access to be able to send it off to a laboratory, they are probably not knowing why they would measure it. They don't understand the importance. And it is so costly that I don't think that the insurance company would like to pay it either because they don't understand why it is important because the knowledge is not there yet. But more and more people are talking about it in social media. More and more people, doctors are coming out now. They have started understanding the importance. They start writing books about it. They start talking about it. And that makes my heart so joyful. But I'm here and I'm talking about it today with you. And usually I encourage you to send my episode to one person that you think about. But this episode, I feel like you should send to every single person that is caring about their health to educate them why their go-to person when it comes to health, why they might have missed this important information. And I have so many people that have been spending over $500 a month on different routines to try to feel better, and they are not getting the results they want. And as soon as they get in a mega balance, everything is changing for them. It's usually the missing puzzle piece, the missing cornerstone to your health that we need to address. And it is so inexpensive that people are like almost laughing and don't understand how important this can be. I had one lady that was so used and had spent so many, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars every month for several months on her health. And when she saw that, oh, you can do this for this cheap, she actually was amazed and didn't believe that it could play that big of a role because she was so used to spend so much money on things that didn't really give her that big of an effect. So how can this simple solution give me a big effect? Well, what I'm saying is it's not a product out there that is the magic. It's your body's ability to self-heal that is the magic. And the answers are usually simple. We just have to feed the body what it needs. We don't have to overcomplicate it. The body is freaking amazing. It is every day. I feel like there is a million of miracles happening in your body every day. If we're allowing it, if we take care of it, if we nurture it, if we are making sure it has what it needs. So that is the biggest reason why people are missing this. The education is not out there yet. It will be out there. And you can play a part in that change to happen. I encourage you to start with yourself. Make yourself a test object, a scientific project. Take the test, see the changes that will happen when you are addressing this in malnutrition, and then take another test, see how your body is responding after 120 days, after 4 months. You will get addicted to feeling good. And with that, guys, I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. I am so happy. And I've had so many overwhelming responses over how they value and treasure this podcast and treasure my knowledge. And thank you so much. You are making my heart so full. And I know my work is important, and I know it will be reaching the people that truly needs it. And that's my wish. So hope you guys are having a wonderful week, and take care. Bye-bye. Hey guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, I encourage you to do one thing for me. Think of one person you want to share this podcast with and copy the link and send it right away. Thanks for playing an important role in the Blue Zone community. And if you want to keep on building a better you, one essential building block at a time, hit that subscribe button. See you in the next episode.